Ronald Reagan was born in 1911 in a flat above the local bank in Tampico, Illinois. Family legend says when his father ran up the stairs and saw his newborn son, he quipped, "He looks like a fat little Dutchman." But who knows? He might grow up to be president someday.
I was the youngest in the family, and he started calling me the Dutchman. I had an older brother. It got shortened down, and I grew up with Dutch.
Reagan's mother was a small woman with auburn hair, but she had a giant sense of optimism. She once told young Ronald that everything in life happened for a reason, that all things were part of God's plan, even the most disheartening setbacks. And in the end, everything always worked out for the best.
We were poor, but the government didn't come around and tell us we were, so we didn't know it. And probably we didn't know it because Nellie was always finding someone that was worse off than we were, that needed help.
Reagan liked to say his father was endowed with the gift of Blarney and the charm of a leprechaun. A legacy he left with his sons was the belief that all men and women, regardless of their color or religion, were created equal. Reagan's father refused to let him see one of the first movie blockbusters, Birth of a Nation, because Jack Reagan felt it glorified the Ku Klux Klan.
That picture, as you know, was a classic, not so much for the subject matter. It had charted a whole new course in the method of making pictures, and therefore is still considered today a kind of historic monument. But our father said it was about the Ku Klux Klan, and no one in his family was going to see that picture. And to this day, after more than 25 years in the motion picture industry, I haven't seen it, and I don't intend to.
As a child, Ronald and his family moved quite often. His father was always searching for a better life for his family, and that made Ronald always the new kid in school. When he was 9, they moved to Dixon, Illinois. He remembered fondly that their home on Hennepin Avenue had a small table in the living room with a bowl that his mother often filled with popcorn when they gathered there in the evening. You have to remember that in a town like Dixon during the early 20s, people had to rely on themselves for entertainment, and Ron's mother was excellent at that. She was the star performer of a group in Dixon that staged what they called readings. Whether comedy or drama, Nellie, that was his mother's name, always threw herself into a part. Her son Ron felt that performing was her first love. One day, she helped Ron memorize a short speech and persuaded him to present it that evening at a reading. Summoning his courage, he walked up to the stage, cleared his throat, and made his theatrical debut. And he loved the response from the audience. He walked off the stage convinced his life had changed. By the time he was a high school senior, he was so addicted to student theatrical productions that no one could keep him out of them. He worked hard to understand the motivations of the characters he played. This process, called empathy, would play a major role in his later political life. By this time, young Ron Reagan had grown to a whopping 5 foot 10.5 inches and weighed over 160 pounds. He made the varsity football team, but found himself warming the bench until mid-season. Then one Saturday morning, the coach announced, "Right guard, Reagan." That's all Ron had to hear. Once he got in the game, he never let the other guy get his position back. After high school graduation, Ron enrolled in Eureka College. He was 17 then. Despite his preoccupation with extracurricular activities, Ron was always convinced he got a solid liberal arts education at Eureka, particularly in economics. He had chosen that major because he felt that one way or another he'd end up dealing with dollars. If not at his father's store, then perhaps in some other business.
You know, I was devoted to some other activities such as football and swimming and campus dramatics. And I've often wondered since if I'd spent more time and worked harder as a student, how far I might have gone.
And he still couldn't say aloud, even to himself, that he wanted to be an actor. He felt that to admit he wanted to be a movie star would have been as eccentric as saying he wanted to go to the moon.
Well, there I was with my degree in economics, a graduate with a Bachelor of Arts degree, And it hadn't occurred to me really what I wanted to do or anything except get a job of some kind or other. It was those kind of times.